Welcome to Billionaire Romance Audiobooks. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It helps more than you know and is the best way to stay up to date on our latest releases. When you subscribe, you'll also get notified when we release new videos. We also love hearing from our listeners. If you have any suggestions for future audiobooks, please feel free to leave a comment below. Or if you want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great day. Subscribe to this channel today and join the Billionaire Romance Audiobooks family.
Billionaire Crush, a holiday romance audiobook by Michelle Love. Audio copyright 2023, BFA Publishing. Note: we edited this romance audiobook to comply with the YouTube content guidelines. If you want to listen to the full-length, non-edited version, you can grab a copy from Google Play Books or Kobo.
Blurb.
A fractious relationship quickly becomes a steamy attraction. That culminates torridly on a cold but beautiful Thanksgiving night. It may be below freezing outside, but it's red hot in the bedroom. Billionaire director offers to help young environmentalist Iskra Ray make a film. That's when they both fall for each other. But soon, everyone's lives are at risk from a devastating natural disaster.
Chapter 1.
Gus Banks looks out over the bright white ice sheets of Antarctica, and he can't help his feelings of excitement mixed with anxiety. He'd spent months setting up this shoot, going through endless physicals and fighting for permits to film here, and now the day had finally arrived. Flying from Chile, he and his film crew were about to embark on a never-before shoot, filming during the Antarctic winter, usually exclusively the domain of the scientists that lived and worked on the continent. He checked his itinerary. They'd land at Fry Station on King George Island and be taken to the British research station where they were to be based. It was highly unusual for any film crew to be allowed to move into a station for this long, 3 months, but then the particular research station they were going to be based at were desperate for funding, and Gus had promised a significant contribution towards it. The perks of being a billionaire. Gus Banks, at 35, was a self-made man, a workaholic from Atlanta, who had become one of the pioneering African-American filmmakers of his generation. Handsome and charming, he could talk the birds out of the trees, and he routinely used his wit and winning smile to great advantage. On top of that, he was a visionary in his field, a man who saw beyond the superficial and personally crafted his art every step of the way to make the films he did. His first love was documentary, but for a time he somehow segued into movies. This, however, was his passion project, A Month at the End of the World. An epic factual film which would rival Attenborough. Of course, it would take the entire Antarctic winter, June through August, to get enough film. He glanced over at his crew, the 5 of them. Mika, Chase, Jen, and Stevie had been with him for years, all of them starting as interns and now indispensable. Jen was the foremost female cinematographer in her field, and Stevie the producer. Mika and Chase handled the equipment. It was only Lance that he didn't know so well. He was a little younger than them, in his early 20s, and Gus still couldn't get a read on him. Lance was, what was he? He'd been the liaison between Gus's production company and the research station, and had arranged the travel, everything. But he was quiet, and now as Gus looked at him, he saw a faint glimmer of nausea in the other man's face and realized he was scared. "Hey, buddy. We're going to be fine." Lance nodded. "I know. Just the solitude scares me." Gus smiled but didn't answer. He, in comparison, was looking forward to the quiet, the stillness, the time alone. He was getting away from Los Angeles, somewhere he had to be for work, but somewhere he found irritating to live with its noise, celebrity, and the vapid chat of the social circuit. Gus knew he was being a snob, but he didn't care. "Next, you'll be telling yourself to go back to nature like some damn hipster fool." Gus smirked to himself. "Nah, it's going to be great." As the station came into view, he was surprised at the smallness of it, and once taken inside, he realized the one thing they wouldn't be getting there would be solitude. The dorm they had been assigned had just enough room for the 7 of them, and even then 2 of them would have to share a bunk. Stevie and Jen volunteered. They'd been best friends since kindergarten and were used to sharing bunks and dorms. Gus dumped his stuff on the bunk next to the window and peered out. He could see nothing. One thing about the Antarctic winter? It was dark. For 2 weeks the sun didn't rise at all, and for the rest it barely peeped over the horizon. But that was the point of him coming here. He wanted this twilight world. He excused himself from the others and went to find his liaison. He found Dr. Paul Havers in a small lab, recognizing the man from the pictures on the internet. Havers greeted him with a smile. "It's good to have you here, Mr. Banks." "Gus, please and thanks. I'm sure you'd rather not have us trampling over the continent, but I do appreciate you allowing this." "No problem, no problem." Havers looked every inch the shabby English professor type, a raggedy beard on his otherwise youthful face and an air of distraction. "Listen, I hope you won't mind this, but I've actually asked one of my colleagues to show you the ropes. Just so happens that I've had to perform an unscheduled experiment, and I need to stay with it. Do you mind?" "Not at all. I don't want to intrude on anything important." Havers beamed. "Good man. Now let me just call Iskra." He picked up a walkie-talkie, and Gus watched with amusement as he fiddled with the communicator. "Damn thing never works. Iskra, come in. Dr. Ray, please come in." The walkie-talkie buzzed, and Gus heard a smoky, dry voice speak up. "Paul, I'm in the next room. You can see me through the window." The sarcasm was laced with fondness, though, and Gus looked up to see a young woman waving a grin on her face. Gosh, she was stunning. Her caramel skin glowed with health, her figure petite but curvaceous. She was dressed in a t-shirt and combat pants, her hair cropped close to her head and dyed bright platinum blonde, her face free of makeup. As she entered their lab, Gus saw her large, soulful brown eyes look curiously at him, then crinkle at the edges as she smiled at her friend. "Paul, just yell for me. This place is so tiny I can hear you all the way from the kitchen." Paul grinned sheepishly. "I know. Listen, Iskra, this is Gus Banks." "Gus, Dr. Iskra Ray, one of our senior scientists here at Harrow Station." Gus offered the young woman his hand, but noticed a definite lack of warmth in her greeting. "She resents us being here." "Damn. Mr. Banks. Good to meet you." Up close, she was even more stunning, but the fact that she was smart too was even more of a turn-on. Gus shook himself, aware he was staring. "Iskra has just reached the end of a research cycle," Havers explained as they made their way to the kitchen for coffee. "Which is why she is free to oversee your stay. She'll show you all how to work in this environment. I assume you read the notes we sent on keeping this environment as pristine as possible." "Of course, and we'll do anything we can to keep the disruption down." Gus smiled his most winning smile at Iskra Ray, but she didn't smile back. "Tough crowd. I assume you know all about filming in this environment?" Her dry tone was slightly mocking. "I do. We've shot up in Canada previously, within the Arctic Circle, so we've stocked up on hand warmers and mittens." "Yep." There was a definite roll of her eyes, but she said nothing else. In the kitchen, he found his crew being fed hot chocolate and cookies by a smiling chef. She grinned at Iskra. "Another stray. The ringleader of this lot, I assume." Iskra's smile was a lot friendlier to his crew, he noticed, especially Jen and Stevie. When she looked at him, her gaze was a little less chilly, and he saw she was relieved he'd brought women and that he worked with them. Okay, that was good. It wasn't going to be the sausage party she had expected, and that pleased her. He introduced both Iskra and Paul to everyone, and they talked briefly about their filming schedule over the next few weeks. "There's a storm coming in for the next couple of days, so that's out. We won't risk taking you out then," Iskra said to the crew's dismay. "Hey. I'm sorry, but we cannot control anything here. It will be the most hostile environment you have ever, or will ever work in. It's not like you'll get a bit of frostbite, a touch of snow blindness. Even a tiny mistake could cost you your life here." She smiled finally. "I'm not trying to scare you, I swear. I want you to get your work done, but safely. That includes living and working in this space. Don't expect to get any alone time, it doesn't exist. We all share bunks and dorms, well almost. There's one single bedroom, and we compete, all of us from the cleaners to the scientists, for rights to it for a week." She laughed and Paul smiled and nodded, It's just a little game we have going. During the winters here, we make our own entertainment. This station is about 150 miles from the next station. We can't socialize, as you can imagine, and traveling that far in winter? Not good news. Paul held up his hands. Before Isk puts you off entirely, we muddle along here quite nicely. There's a smaller crew here than a normal station, because the work we do is more specialized. Now, any questions? Gus shook his head and looked at his crew. Most of them just smiled, but Lance stuck his hand up. Will we see penguins? Gus saw another roll of Iskra's eyes, but Paul seemed to take the question in his stride. They're a couple of 1,000 miles away, across the continent. I thought you were here to capture the knights, not the wildlife? We are, Gus said, shooting a frustrated look at Lance. He's new. Later, after they'd settled in, Gus and his crew sat in the kitchen and talked over what they would do when the storm subsided. An hour later, Iskra joined them and Gus outlined what they'd agreed. She nodded. Fine, but you understand I won't take you out unless the weather's stable enough? Sometimes these storms go on for weeks. Weeks? Gus gaped at her, and she nodded. I told you. There's virtually nothing in this environment that's under our control, except our reaction to it. She glanced at the others. I hope you brought a deck of cards. Gus followed her out into the hallway. You really don't want us here, do you? Why do you say that? He smiled. You relish telling us the storms can last for weeks. Mr. Banks? Gus. Iskra sighed. Gus, look. I'm all for documenting this place, but you have to understand. We have work to do, work that could affect how our planet survives global warming, pollution, you name it. This team here, we don't do the glamour stuff. No penguins, no whale watching. We're small, underfunded, and we don't see daylight for weeks. We go a little stir-crazy, but we keep that inside the station because if we lose focus outside, people die. People have died. I understand, he said. They walked in silence for a while, then he grinned to himself. So no polar bears then? Iskra stopped, turned and opened her mouth to protest before understanding his mischievous grin. She smiled reluctantly. No, Gus, no polar bears, we're about 12,000 miles south of them. I know. He was glad she seemed to warm to him. Clearly, humor was the way to go with this gorgeous but hard-nosed scientist. I guessed you did, but you might want to tell that young kid with you. Lance? Yeah, he's straight out of film school. Something like that. Iskra stopped outside her lab. I have to work. Look, I'm sure we can all get what we want out of this experience. Who knows? You might even get to see the Aurora Australis. She smiled. Which is more than I can say for the polar bears. The suckers. Right? South Pole, best pole. Good night, Gus. Night, Iskra. Gus laid awake, listening to the storm outside. The station was obviously heated, but every so often an icy cold breeze blew through the gaps in the window's seal. It really demonstrated the lack of funding here, and Gus made a mental note to make sure they had better accommodation for their work. So, a scientist bats her eyelashes at you, and you throw money at this place? Firstly, he told himself, Iskra Ray would never bat her eyelashes at a billionaire, and secondly, shut up. He chuckled softly to himself. Around him his team slept, some of them quieter than others. Jen snored softly until Stevie, grumbling, nudged her onto her side. Mika lay with his mouth wide open, dead to the world. Gus stared up at the roof, and tried not to think about Iskra Ray's chocolate brown eyes. Iskra lingered over her experiment longer than she needed to. It wasn't even an official one, just something to pass the time, distract her from her annoyance at the film crew being there. She'd been the only one to object when Paul had told them all about the project, but she'd had to shut up quick when he mentioned the subsequent huge cash injection that their project so desperately needed. It meant she could stay here throughout the winter. Iskra loved the Antarctic life. She'd come 3 years ago, almost straight from studies at Cambridge University, and had fallen in love with the place, the people, and the atmosphere. She even loved the cold, it made her feel alive. Only a few times had this place shown its teeth to her. Each time had been a wake-up call, and that's why she resented the intrusion now. Any mistake could cost lives. Iskra shut off the light in her lab and went to her dorm room. There was silence, all her dorm mates asleep already as she stripped down to her underwear and into bed. She pulled the covers to her chin and curled up on her side. There was another reason she was so irked at the film crew, and now, alone, she could confront it. Gus Banks. Whether she liked it or not, there was one thing about him that really annoyed her. He was gorgeous, damn him. Iskra had never felt such a shift in her soul as when she laid eyes on him, and it damn well irritated the crap out of her. She'd made it her priority to not get involved with anyone. Indeed, since her days at Cambridge, she hadn't dated anyone, and her life was just how she wanted it. All science, no complications. Which is why it unsettled her when she walked into Paul's lab, and the moment she saw Gus Banks, her body reacted. Thank God, only internally, but a firestorm raged inside her. His dark eyes, dark curls, and gosh, that smile, 1,000 watts at least. Iskra hadn't felt like that in forever, or ever, she realized now. She turned over in her bunk and sighed. She really didn't need to be getting a crush on someone like Gus Banks. They were so completely opposite, and she didn't want anything to complicate the life she had built here. Nothing.
Chapter 2.
Luckily for Gus and his team, the storm cleared in 2 days, and so early on their third day in the Antarctic, Iskra was able to take them out to some sites suitable for the filming. It was early June, and although the snow was lit only by the barest light, Gus was able to get some spectacular shots of the landscape. He was genuinely awed by the beauty of the place, and he told their guide so. He noticed Iskra Ray was warming to him as he expressed his admiration of her homeland. "Where do you come from? Where's your original home?" She smiled. "I'm a bi-country girl. I was born in Seattle, but I grew up in England. My parents divorced, and I went to live with my mom in England. Bath. You know it?" "I do. My grandparents were British." Gus smiled at her. "Dad moved to Atlanta when he was a teenager, and met my mother. I was born in Atlanta, but spent a lot of time in the Yorkshire Dales." She smiled and he grinned. "What? You pronounced Yorkshire right. Yorkshire, not Yorkshire." "The Shire, Mr. Frodo." Gus did his best Samwise Gamgee impression. She snorted with laughter. "I think you just showed your inner nerd. And that's a West Country accent, not a Yorkshire accent." Gus grinned at her. This was more like it. Iskra noticed his admiration and mock glared at him. "Thanks, whatever librarian lady scientist fantasy you've got going on, can it?" Gus threw his head back and laughed. "Hey, don't ruin it now." He held her gaze for a beat too long. "Busted," she said in a low voice and smiled. "Hey Gus. Can we borrow you for a sec?" Lance, always one to ruin a moment, called out, and the moment was lost. With a rueful smile at Iskra, he went over to his crew. "Sup? Batteries are dying too quick." Iskra came over to them. "It's the cold. Those hand warmers you brought. Put them in the bag with the batteries, or even better, wear the batteries next to your skin." "Really? Really? You learn these weird things living out here." Gus smiled at her. "Thanks for the tip. Any more?" "Ha, I'm sure other stuff will come up, but honestly, it'll take hours to tell you everything. Listen guys, I do have to get back to the station, I'm cooking tonight. We take turns when Ellie has her nights off." Gus walked with Iskra back to the Jeep. "You cook?" "Dude, there's a lot of downtime here, and unlike some of the stations, we don't have a movie theater. I learned to cook really quick, but tonight it's plain old lasagna, I'm afraid." Iskra's food was anything but plain, Gus discovered, and he complimented her on the rich, herby Italian dish. "It's nothing really." Her face flushed at his compliment though. They were sat around a long table with everyone else from the station and Gus's crew, but as he sat next to Iskra, there seemed to be an intimacy between them, as much intimacy as anyone could muster in a crowd. They talked about her work, her studies, and Iskra asked him about his life directing and living in Los Angeles. "Have you ever been?" She shook her head. "Never appealed. I'd love to go to San Francisco though. I've always wanted to do a road trip along the West Coast." She chuckled. Although the weather might be a shock after living here for so long. Doesn't the dark get to you? Actually, no. It's the summers that get to me, too much light. Midnight sun and all of that. It was a novelty at first, but seriously, after a while, even with blackout curtains, it's infuriating. She smiled. But it's a small price to pay. Gus nodded. You know what I've been thinking? And I'm serious, this isn't one of my scientist fantasies. Which you're keeping to yourself. Iskra tried to look disapproving, but a smile played around her lush mouth. Gosh, he wanted to kiss her. Which I'm keeping to myself, for now. But really, what has really inspired me today isn't just the spectacular views, it's the community here. Her eyebrows shot up. Community? You mean the 8 of us? Gus nodded. I do. Just seeing how you all interact with each other, it's a family. It is. I'll admit it is. I'm not super close to my real family, no estrangement, it's just we all do our own thing, then get together on the holidays. But yeah, here, because we have to look out for each other. She trailed off, and Gus saw something in her eyes he couldn't figure out. What is it? Iskra hesitated for a long time. It's not just our station. Despite the distance, we get pretty close to others who are close by, and I mean relatively close by, a couple 100 miles. We have video chats, and when any of them need emergency help, we know we could get to them pretty quickly. She took a deep breath. But not always. There was a station in one of the more unstable parts of the continent, not far from here. The shelf collapsed, completely out of the blue, and took 6 of our friends with it. Gus was appalled. I'm so sorry. Iskra nodded. One of the crew who died was a good friend, and the others were fantastic people too. It's just how it is out here. Things change in a heartbeat and lives are lost, or there's damage to the ecosystem. I could go on. Would you go on camera? Tell your story. Iskra hesitated. Can I think about it? Of course. No pressure, but being here has opened my eyes to the lives you all lead. I find it fascinating. And you stay all year? If the funding holds up, otherwise I go back to Cambridge for the winter, although obviously it's summer there. Massachusetts. England. Gus smiled at her. Of course, sorry. You like it there? Iskra made a face. It's okay. Not my favorite place. That's here? She nodded. It is. They smiled at each other, a connection forging between them, before Iskra's attention was taken by Paul asking her a question. Gus glanced down to see her hand resting on the bench between them, and he slowly, discreetly slid his hand over hers. He was gratified when she didn't pull away. Was it too much to hope that she felt the way he did? How did he feel? He'd known her for a couple of days, that was all. But Gus was floored by this intelligent, funny, independent woman who wasn't interested in the least about his prestigious career, his money, or his position. The small gesture of her holding his hand back filled him with hope, but later, when he was in bed, listening to Jen snoring in the bunk across the room, he realized that even if he were to start something with Iskra, nothing could happen. There was simply no way they could have privacy or even longevity. He was only here for 3 months, and he could tell Iskra wouldn't want to come back to LA with him, nor would he want her to give up this haven. Jen nudged him as they walked to breakfast the next morning. So, you and Iskra? He smiled. I wish, he said in a low voice, but let's face it, Jen, it's hardly the right time or place. Jen nodded slowly. Things can be arranged. He rolled his eyes. Jen, one of his oldest and dearest friends, was forever trying to fix him up. I'd like to see you try. A week later, he was editing the footage they'd shot in the dorm room, Jen beside him. The footage they had shot was astonishing, and both of them were fired up about it. Iskra had talked to Paul, who was enthusiastic about the documentary Gus had proposed. Since then, Gus had shadowed practically every member of the research station crew, from the cleaner to Paul himself. Most of the footage, though, thought Gus guiltily, centered on Iskra. The camera loved the beautiful young woman, and he found her hypnotic to watch on screen. He was aware of Jen watching him as he viewed the interview. You was cray-cray about her, Jen teased, then stretched out her arms and yawned loudly. I'm going to grab some coffee. She left him alone, and Gus smiled to himself. There was a knock at the door. Hello? Iskra popped her head around the door. Jen said you wanted to see me. Gus hid a smile. Jen and her machinations, well, he didn't exactly object. Hey, come on in. Iskra sat down beside him, then winced. Oh gosh, is that me? He laughed. No, we found your doppelganger. Yes, it's you, you shine out, Isk. Haha, fool. But she smiled at him. It was the most natural thing in the world to lean over and kiss her, and yet he didn't. He didn't want to presume or risk the friendship they had built over the last few days. Iskra looked back at the screen. Hey, can you show me some of the footage you took last night? The sky was so clear. It was. Here. He rewound to the footage she wanted to see, and she smiled. Gosh, the beauty of this place never ever fails to floor me. Even though you see it every day? She nodded. It's my place, man, my nirvana. She leaned closer to the screen, and Gus couldn't help himself. He stroked the back of his finger down her smooth cheek. Iskra froze, and for a terrible moment he thought he might have ruined everything. Instead, she slowly turned to meet his gaze. I'm sorry, he said softly, I couldn't help myself, Her lips were against his suddenly, and they kissed gently, the kiss intensifying as their arms curled around the other. Finally, when they broke apart, breathless, Iskra smiled at him. Sorry, I've been wanting to do that for a week. Gus laughed, relieved. Good, not just me then? Definitely not. They kissed again, her hands on his face, his on her back. This is crazy, she said when the kiss ended, leaning her forehead against his. Just the logistics of trying to do this out here. I know, he said. I've been trying to figure this out for a week. Iskra laughed. Dirty boy. She touched his face, studying every inch of him. Guess I'm going to have to try to win the bedroom privileges. Gus grinned widely. Now who's being dirty? She blushed. Dude, I'm 25, not 14. I know what you want. Listen, Isk. I'm not expecting anything. It's going to be difficult to, you know. And besides that, I leave in 2.5 months. Your life is here. Does this thing really have a shelf life beyond that? Iskra leaned against his shoulder. Everything you say is right, Gus, and God knows I wasn't looking for a relationship out here. But I've also not felt this connection to anyone, either here or at home. Gus kissed her temple. Let's just hang out, enjoy each other's company, and worry about it later. She smiled up at him. Then you'd better kiss me again, before someone comes by and ruins this. He laughed and pressed his lips to hers again, adoring the sweet, sweet taste of her.
Chapter 3.
It was another week before Iskra came to their dorm and woke them. Guys, you have to come see this. They all dressed in their warmest gear and followed Iskra out into the gloom. She pointed upwards, smiling. Above them, a breathtaking display. Aurora Australis. Iskra said. It appears quite regularly, but never this vivid. You got lucky, kids. Pink, green, purple, blue, all the colors swirling above them, a celestial fireworks show. Gus and his crew were awestruck. Wow, just wow. He felt Iskra's hand slip into his as they gazed up at the night sky. He glanced down at her, and was surprised to see her looking as enchanted as the newcomers were. It never gets old, she explained and smiled. The wonder of it. Gus felt a shift in his soul. Gosh, this woman. Not caring who was watching, he kissed her on the mouth. Iskra responded, snaking her arms around his neck, and when they finally broke away, they noticed the others had moved away. They were giving them some much-needed privacy, and Gus felt a wave of gratitude. He cupped Iskra's face in her hand. I can't figure out whether this is wildly romantic or cheesy, but gosh, what a night. Why not both? She laughed and kissed him again. It's quite something, isn't it? Beautiful, he replied, but he was looking at her, not the Aurora now, and she smiled up at him, her eyes soft. They heard someone clear his throat behind them and turned. Paul Havers was smiling at them. Ellie's making hot chocolate for everyone. Okay, cool. Iskra's face was a little flushed, and Gus grinned at Paul. Sounds good, boss? Paul nabbed Iskra as the others went ahead. Congratulations, honey, he's a good man. Thanks, Paul. Her smile faded. But as thrilling as it is, there's no future, is there? Isk, one thing I've learned in my years is that sometimes you just have to enjoy the moment. Nothing is impossible, nothing is out of your reach. Just enjoy and figure everything else out later. He winked at her, and she chuckled. By the way, I'll be working all night in the lab, so the bedroom is free. Paul. I'm just telling you where I'll be is all. And there's fresh sheets on the bed. Paul. He laughed loudly. Sweetie, out here, you have to be proactive and resourceful, not precious about things. Enjoy. Iskra's face was still burning as she joined the others. Was she really going to do this? It was embarrassing to know that Paul had practically arranged a session for her and Gus, but still. Gosh. It was mortifying. Then Gus smiled at her and all her fears disappeared. Gosh, she wanted him, and now there was an opportunity. She went up to him and kissed him, then put her lips to his ears and whispered what Paul had told her. She saw the fire ignite in Gus's eyes and he nodded, brushing his lips against hers. They stayed to have hot chocolate, and then excused themselves to knowing glances from the others. As they walked hand in hand to the bedroom, Gus chuckled. This is so weird. Everyone knows what we're about to do, it's kind of freaky. Welcome to life at the bottom of the world, Iskra said. Privacy is a valuable resource. Then let's not waste it. Iskra shivered with anticipation as they closed the door of the bedroom behind them. Better lock it too, she said with a grin. There may be some people left who don't know what's going on. You think? No, but lock it anyway. There was an electric atmosphere between them. Iskra felt short of breath as Gus took her into his arms and they kissed slowly, softly at first. Then as the intensity built, their hands roamed the other's body. Iskra Ray. I'm falling for you so hard, so damn hard. They caught their breath, kissing tenderly, smiling. Then, not wanting to waste a moment of their time together, they began to make love throughout the night, until both were sated and exhausted. Iskra sighed. How rare these moments in life were, the moments of pure happiness and pleasure. Gus was out with most of his crew now, filming on the tundra. Paul had accompanied them today, wanting to see what they were filming, and Iskra could hardly disagree after what Paul had done for her and Gus. Also, she thought now, she did have work to do. She was in the lab setting up when she heard someone knocking at the door. Come in. Lance, the young production assistant, stuck his head in the door and smiled at her. Sorry to intrude, but I was bored and looking for company. She smiled at him. Come on in. I'm not doing anything dangerous. Lance took up the chair she indicated and watched her. It must be thrilling to be able to say you helped conserve this place. Iskra smiled. We're only a very small part of a huge operation, but yes. It beats sitting in lecture halls and cramming for exams. Did you go to college? Yes, a community college in my hometown. Where's that? Ohio. Oh, cool. He looked at her askance. You've never been to Ohio, have you? She laughed. Now don't be like that. Everyone thinks their hometown is boring, but I bet with some perspective you'll go back now and realize just how much you love it. I'll take your word for it. She studied him. He couldn't be much different in age to her, 25, probably even younger, a preppy-looking guy with sandy hair and creases in his trousers. How do you get into film? Honestly, it was the only thing I was interested in doing when we had to choose our majors. I enjoy it, but to be honest, and please don't be offended, I'd rather be working on big-budget movies. Iskra laughed. No offense taken, but the thing I learned as I started out as a lab assistant is that's where the gold is, that's where you learn your craft. Gus is a genius, he'll give you a good background and his contacts will help you get where you want. I suppose. Lance put his elbow onto the lab bench and knocked a flask flying. Iskra caught it before it hit the floor and shattered. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm such a klutz. Don't worry about it. Lance looked around. There's not anything too dangerous here though, right? Plenty that'll kill you. She set the flask back up the bench, well away from Lance. Any lab is dangerous. Now that is cool. Iskra rolled her eyes. You're such a boy. Lance laughed, and she noticed he looked at her with soft, gooey eyes. Oh no, don't get a crush on me. She might be a similar age, but she felt an age older than this sweet little kid. Just stay away from anything with a skull and crossbones on it for me, would you? Pinky swear. And he even raised his little finger in the air. He is such a sweetie, she said later when she told Gus about her conversation with his assistant. But you must have gotten him straight from grade school. Gus laughed. Something like that. Actually, underneath the goofy exterior, I think he has real potential. He just has to gain self-confidence in what he's doing. Iskra studied her lover. Huh. What? You're a trailblazer. Gus looked surprised. How so? Well, your team is all heavily experienced and ready for a challenge like this, and then there's the newbie. Dropping him into this situation in the most challenging environment on the planet, that's one hell of a risk. Gus nodded. I like taking risks. He got up and put his arms around her. Look at us, this is a risk. I have 2 months left here, and already I'm wondering how I can extend my stay. I'm falling for you, Iskra Ray, hard, and it's dumb and impossible, and I have no idea what we're going to do after those 2 months are up. She kissed him. A wise man told me just to enjoy the moment. Let's do that and see what happens. Paul and the other team members had banded together and told Iskra that for the duration of the film crew's visit, they were assigning their weeks in the single bedroom to her. Iskra had blushed and called them all pimps but thanked them. I'll make it up to you, I swear, but thank you. This means a lot. Expect a lot of teasing, Harry, one of the other scientists told her, and she grinned. Oh, I will. But the next few weeks were heaven. During the 2 weeks of absolute night, Gus and his team were filming constantly, getting the most incredible footage of the night sky over Antarctica. And Iskra and Gus managed to eke out hours alone outside together, watching the sky, its stars so bright because of the lack of light pollution that Gus could barely believe the beauty of it. Puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? It does. Look at them. As a scientist, as a human, all I want to do is know each of them, what they're like. Do they have life? It kills me that I'll probably never know. Gus pressed his lips to her temple as he wrapped his arms around her. You never know. Someday, just suddenly, it might all become clear. She turned in his arms and studied him. You're right, anything could happen. 3 days later, Gus awoke to find the bed empty beside him. He tugged on his pants and sweater and went to find Iskra. To his horror, he found her and the other scientists huddled around a radio, their faces creased with worry and horror. Iskra was tear-stained. There was an earthquake near Mount Erebus. One of the stations near there was right on the epicenter. A rescue effort is in place, but the weather has complicated things. There's been a few fatalities. Her eyes filled with tears, and Gus wrapped his arms around her and stayed with them while they listened to the broadcast of the emergency services. Understandably, dinner was a subdued affair, and when Gus and Iskra went to bed, they didn't make love, they just stayed up talking and holding each other. I didn't know anyone there well, but enough to feel empty for the loss. We're a family whether we spend 5 minutes talking on the radio or months or years living together. She sighed and leaned against him. And I feel horribly guilty about how happy I am right now when people are dying. I can't help feeling that something's going to happen so that karma is balanced, that I'll... She couldn't finish her sentence and took a deep shaky breath in instead. Gus tightened his arms around her. Isk, it's not your fault, you know? You told me out here there's no controlling what Mother Nature does, and it's a crapshoot whether you live or die. Don't feel bad for living. Hey. He tilted her face up so he could kiss her. Iskra Ray. Doc. I love you. I didn't expect to come to the bottom of the world. He grinned. Or the top if you're into that whole, who says what's the top of the world thing. But I didn't expect to come here and find my soulmate. And I don't know if you believe in all of that, but I do. And you are it, Doc. My love, my heart is yours. Iskra started to cry then but smiled. I love you too, Gus Banks, and the hell with it, I'm scared, and I don't know how we're going to make this work without sacrificing what we both love so much, but I'm ready to try and figure it out. Gus laughed, moved. Well, we can certainly try. Even if I have to move my editing studio to South Georgia, it would mean a long-distance relationship for both of us. It would. She stroked his face, feeling the 3 weeks' growth of beard on his face. But we could compromise. I don't have to spend every winter here. I could do research back in the States for a few months. And hell, I could get a job making educational films here to help with funding. It's not like I have to make any more freaking money. Sorry, humble brag there. Iskra laughed, wiping her face. Money bags. Yeah, that must be weird, to never have to worry about money again. What's mine is yours. She shook her head. Nope. It's not something I aspire to, being rich. Gus grinned wryly. It's one of the greatest mysteries, how I get paid so much for basically just entertaining people, when people like yourself and medical staff and emergency services do the important stuff in life. Creativity is important too. And you educate. Gus nodded. I'm a geek. Yes, you are. Iskra snuggled into him. But you're my geek. You bet I am. They held each other closely for the rest of the night, talking over what they could work out once the filming ended, and they went back to their lives.
Chapter 4.
Paul, can I talk to you? Iskra was shifting from foot to foot, disbelieving what she was about to say to her boss. Paul smiled and beckoned her in. Come in, Isk. He put down the slides he was studying and sat down. I have a feeling I know what this is about. Iskra felt like crying. I never thought I'd be having this conversation with you. Paul patted her arm. Sweetheart, life moves on. People fall in love, change their lives. I would have liked to work with you for years and years to come, but in truth, you were always going to outgrow us. And now you have 2 reasons to explore what lies out in the world. You're a special talent, Dr. Ray. Just do me one favor. What's that? Be happy. Be honest about your choices and don't sell yourself short. Gus Banks is a wonderful man, and I'm delighted for you. But you are second to no one, remember that. I know Gus thinks so. I'm confident that he'll be your biggest champion, so use that. You are going to make me cry, Paul, and you know what a hard-faced woman I am. She was joking while wiping the tears from her cheeks. She hugged the older man. I'll be back every damn summer, I swear. We'll see. Iskra went back to her lab. Gus and the film crew were out at the last filming site, and in 3 days' time she would be leaving with them, at least for a few weeks. She would spend some time off. She had weeks and weeks of vacation owed after all, and she and Gus would stay in Argentina for a while as they figured out the next part of their lives and their relationship. She was setting up one of her last experiments, funneling pure oxygen into a tank when Lance wandered in. He had been making a habit of doing this when the crew were out filming, and although Iskra enjoyed his company, she wondered why Gus had brought the young man to the continent if he never went out to learn with the crew. She asked Lance now. You only have a few days left to observe, so what are you doing in here? Why isn't Gus teaching you? Lance smiled shyly.